We are going to be having frosts for several more weeks, and it's early in the growing season, and so there isn't a whole lot that is growing yet. We're planting so many things, and the gardens about are about to be bursting with life. But most things are still just in the beginning stages. Everything that is, except for our herb garden. It's still a little bare and will be full and bursting with life by the end of the summer as well. But there are a few things that have overwintered and are lush and plentiful. And I'm counting this as our first abundance. And I hope there's a lot more abundance in our future. But for now, come along with me as we preserve this abundance of sage, parsley, so that we can have some of our own garden fresh herbs for the winter to come.
Should we let this one keep growing for a minute?
Maybe.
Get a little bigger and fuller.
Stronger.
We've got our dill popping up right here and our cilantro.
Wait, is this still?
I think that's a hollyhock that has somehow come
Yeah,
back.
remember you planted little
A
ones
couple
all
of them
around
right there, and then I changed my mind about this garden bed.
When we wake, hear the birds and see the sun. Side by side, our fears are done.
So, the perfect time to harvest herbs before you want to freeze dry them, which is what I'm going to do, or really preserve them at all if you're freezing them, dehydrating them, or drying them out. The best time is to do it before they are flowering. So this sage plant that I'm picking all the leaves from, it was almost flowering. You can see the buds that are forming. So I might have been a little bit late in the game on the sage, but we tasted a little bit of the leaves and they were just perfect. So as I was harvesting them, I had the idea to create just a mini vase of the sage flowers. I had so many of them and figured the plant could go without a few of them. I'm the kind of person who will pick weeds from the yard that are flowering and put them in the vase, and I just
Will they all
think they're
fit?
beautiful. This also inspired the kids to go around the property and pick flowers that we had growing. These blue ones were some wildflowers that I planted last year, a wildflower mix, a Great Basin mix. And I want to get more because they overwintered and they grew back without me even watering them. And then the other purple flowers were ones we had in our cold frames. So we threw those in with our little vase, and I just love that. I love having fresh flowers, and I even if they are just little weed flowers from the yard, I just think that life adds joy to my heart. So I'm not in need of a perfect vase. So what I did with these herbs before freeze drying them is I rinsed them off and patted them dry as best as I can. And whenever I freeze dry something, it's so freeze drying is an even longer preservation process than dehydrating, meaning that it keeps for longer. And that's because it takes out all of the moisture without cooking it, every last like drop. So when I've dehydrated things, it doesn't last as long. It's still a good method, but it really dehydrates things. So it really gets out that moisture and it seems to preserve the flavor a lot better than when I dehydrate herbs. So that's the process I'm doing now. And I've read that it's better to preserve your herbs in their whole form. So I have our sage leaves and I'm not chopping them up. And same with the parsley. The parsley, I'm removing some of the stems just so that I don't have to remove those later when I'm chopping them up to add them into meals that I'm using. And so I went ahead with the parsley, I rinsed it off, and I had a lot more of the parsley than I had of the sage. So I think I will end up getting 2 trays out of it, but I did pick off the stems before putting that in. And my favorite thing to do with the freeze dryer is if you freeze the food before putting it in the freezer, it cuts the time down by almost half. There's not an exact number, but it cuts it down a lot. If you've never freeze dried something, it takes quite a long time, especially if the thing you're doing has a lot of moisture. It could take like over a few days. So things like fruit take several days. These herbs won't take that long. But if you freeze it beforehand, then it cuts that time down significantly and then you're using less power. So that's what I typically do whenever I freeze something. And I try not to waste as much as I can in our home. And I would normally compost this, but we have herbs that are really good for rabbits. And so I gave some to the kids to feed to the baby bunnies, and I headed over to also feed some to our adult rabbits so that they can reap the benefits of the nutrition that comes from these herbs as well.
No, look. That guy really likes it.
So I quickly wrapped up this freeze drying and I put them in the freezer. And I have about I have 5 trays that can fit in our freeze dryer. And so this is only going to do 3. So what I do is I just stick them in the freezer. And then once I fill up 2 more trays, which I think I did with like taco meat. And once I get those full and frozen, then I throw them in the freeze dryer and just do a full batch all together. And I am loving this. I love having this way of preserving food for our family. And once it was all finished, I just stored it in some jars. You can put an oxygen absorber in there and it will actually kind of seal the jar to preserve it for even longer. Knowing that I'm going to just be using these herbs for this winter, I don't put oxygen absorbers in all of them. And just knowing that we'll use it before it goes bad. I'm not totally sure why, but I get multiple letters in the mail from the Arbor Day Foundation. Maybe I signed up for them years ago, and then are always asking for donations, promoting growing trees, which I'm all about. And I finally took one of their letters that they sent us, and it said if you donate any amount of money, they will send you 10 free trees and 2 crepe myrtles or whatever. So I support this foundation, so I sent a little donation and they sent us these trees and they told you that they would be, trees that are 6 to 12 inches tall. So you knew you would be getting baby trees. Like these things are babies. I did that a long time ago, probably over the winter, January at some time, and I sort of kind of forgot about them until recently. I got an email saying they were coming. And I was like, oh shoot, where am I going to put these trees? And what are they sending me again? And so earlier in the video, I showed the color. The trees each had a little bit of a color on them. Once I got them in the mail, I didn't know which tree I got. And then I looked up on their website and it's color coordinated. So the trees had various colors. So I knew finally what I was getting of the trees.
So I've got my key here. So in the rabbit area, we're going to have a shade tree, which I've chosen to do the dogwood, because it doesn't drop berries.
Dogwoods are really pretty.
Yeah, they have flowers.
And the dogwood is the Virginia's national tree.
This will be a dogwood. It doesn't drop fruit. Some of those other ones drop fruit or berries or seeds.
Rabbits might eat
And I don't want the rabbits I don't want them to eat that. Planting such a tiny tree. Stepped on. Maybe we should protect it. You can like barely even see it on camera, but it's right there. So I think I'm going to get this wire here and put a little cage around it so that it doesn't get stepped on.
wood, but the mamas would definitely.
Oh, I bet they would. Do you think that would protect this tree enough?
Felicia wouldn't know. She's our mother.
Yeah, she will. Thing 'em.
Yeah.
this itty bitty little tree.
With zip ties and wire. I want a zip tie one.
You smell like chives or onions. Did you eat some?
Yeah.
Don't step on this tree. We want it to shade this area.
Do you want to cut the zip tie shorter?
Yeah,
So the rabbits can't nibble on it?
Yeah, maybe get scissors and cut it kind of right before the cinch part.
So I finally got all of those trees planted, and I'm a little worried about them getting stepped on. And I also feel kind of silly planting this tree that's only like 6 to 12 inches. It says that some of these trees can grow 2 to 3 feet a year, especially those pines out in the front. And so we'll see. I don't know. I'm kind of not sure we'll be able to keep them alive long enough to enjoy them, but we'll give it a whirl. So we have a tree in the pasture. We have a couple bushy flowering bushes, crepe myrtles that are going to be behind the chicken coop. And I put those ones there to kind of act as a privacy barrier, but also shade for the chickens in the late afternoon when it's really hot. And it'll be kind of a pretty backdrop for the chicken coop. I put a dogwood tree in the rabbit patch that we're gonna have for the rabbits, and then we put 5 pines out front and 3 more flowering trees out there. So should be exciting. You guys keep watching, and maybe in 10 years you'll see all of our beautiful trees. Sure, a lot of you have already passed your last frost date and you're throwing your cucumbers in the ground and your squash. I want to be planting those in our ground so bad. And I know we're having a really warm week this week, and we're having no frosts in the evening this week. I'm sure within the next week or so we'll get we'll probably get a couple more pretty intense frosts. Because guess what? Our last frost is like June 1st. So, and last year we even had one on the 15th of June. The only problem is I don't want to wait forever to plant those. I don't want to wait till June to plant those things. So what I've done is I have utilized our cold frame for this. So we're planting the cucumbers, our pumpkins, our squash plants, some more flowers like sunflowers, and I have planted those in the cold frame so they can still get that outdoor experience. And in fact, I'm opening it during the day now because it's so hot. And then if I forget to open it, everything kind of shrivels up, and then I close it at night so they don't get frosts. So then as soon as June happens, I will be putting them all in the ground, and they will have that head start and have a few weeks ahead of the game.